back to another episode of the Pop Astrologist Presents. This time we are doing transit talk, and I'm so happy to welcome back our favorite guest. I mean, hello, Camille. What's up?
Hi, I'm back. Happy to be back. Talk about the transits. What is going on? Let's do a debrief.
Oh my gosh. Yes, because okay, so I started trying to do a transit talk series like I think a month ago or something with the Venus Jupiter conjunction. And I was like, "Oh my God, there's so much to talk about." And I feel so limited by the 3 minute reels on Instagram, like cuz no one's watching over 3 minutes and I'm like, I have to fit everything in 3 minutes. But the reality is, in this Uranus Gemini era, there's
Mm.
never going to be enough to say about the transit in one particular fashion. Wouldn't
No,
you
there's
agree?
just so much going on. There's like you talk about one thing, it splinters into three things, which splinter into other eight important things. So yeah, you're just
Hmm.
never gonna get it all. It's like our mouth is full and it's really hard to chew.
Hmm. Oh my God. And what a week this was.
Mhm.
And admittedly, you and I were talking about one of the stories that we're going to be highlighting today. But then when you really took a step back, you realized, wow, we are living obviously in very, very different times, unprecedented times. Like it feels like we're falling off a cliff, but
Mhm.
yet the world still turns. So
Yes.
how do we wrap our hands around this, Camille? Mars and
Yeah.
Libra,
Mars and
Mercury.
Libra, opposite Chiron in Aries, which you've been bringing up all week with all of these things that have been
Hmm.
coming up. I
Hmm.
also think a lot of it is the building square between Mars and Pluto. So remembering that, Mars is almost in Scorpio from Libra
Hmm.
as we speak. So yeah, I think it was the Mars show this week.
The week we're talking about specifically is the week of September 14th. So,
Mhm.
just to be very clear, this is a transit review of the past week. And, given that things are pretty hot right now, some of these events could still be playing out into the following week. So, I really appreciate what you said about the Mars Pluto next week. So, yes, we are recording this on Friday, September 19th, recapping the week. So, maybe before we
Mhm.
even dive into the subject matter at hand or like the topics at hand, how would you describe Mars in Libra? Like, let's maybe just like break down the transit in your own words and then see how all the different ways it's come out this week.
Yeah, so thinking generally about the archetype of Libra, wanting balance, wanting symmetry, fairness, and justice, right? The
Hmm.
things that we all know about Libra. Then we think about Mars, and Mars is going to activate those things. So it's going to activate the advocates or like speaking out a little bit more, kind of fighting or tolerating discomfort or putting yourself out on a limb, even
Hmm.
if it will create justice and the balance of the scales.
Hmm.
The other side of Libra is obviously aesthetic and art, and the savvy Mars in Libra knows how to make a message
Hmm.
through art, through aesthetic, right? I feel like Libra can sometimes represent these places where it's like everyone's dressed up and this is the way things go, and we're going to do this and it's going to be that, like an award show. And Mars
Hmm.
is like, hold up, let me disrupt it real quick, and then you can get back
Hmm.
to it. So yeah, I love Mars in Libra as in more unanticipated ways, I guess. Sometimes that fighting spirit can show up where we least expect it, but certainly fighting for justice or fighting for one's sense of fairness was everywhere.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that, especially because, Mars traditionally
Mm.
doesn't necessarily do well in Libra, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that also was on display this week? Sort of, we want to say something, but maybe it might not necessarily pan out the way we thought it would.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So Mars in Libra is kind of like what happens when you invite like the drunk uncle to the, the nice dinner. It's like, yes, you belong here. Yes, we care about you, but the way that you're maybe saying it, it's like doesn't come
Hmm.
across well. Again, like Mars is the warrior. He's bulky. He knocks things over, right? He's not going to do the graceful etiquette kind of, aesthetic oriented things that Venus
Hmm.
in Libra would do. So yeah, I
Hmm.
do think that there's always an element of planets being in an opposite place to their home or domicile, where it's
Hmm.
like, ooh, did not quite pan out. I think as you said, or like, being a foreigner in a foreign land is like, I'm just gonna try, see what happens. And sometimes that can lead to disastrous results.
Hmm. Yeah. The way I think about it is, because Libra likes to find the right words to say that can move the
Right.
needle, but still not like piss everyone off. So it's like very difficult, to find the right word choice. And Mars comes in and just, I just want to say it. Okay. I'm
Yeah, well,
just
it's not waiting for the right moment. Yeah.
Literally, which is the vibe we're so in. We are also recording this at like Mars at 29 degrees Libra, which, I feel like it's very much in the air. But I've always found it really fascinating, right? To go from a sign of fall into a sign of rulership between Libra and Scorpio. And so, not to say this is like a predictive episode, because again, we're going to review the events of the week, but how do you anticipate that energy like playing out? Like if, this week, like, oh, things maybe didn't go as according to plan, or maybe we've made one bold step into social justice and advocacy, what does next week kind of then bring with Mars and Scorpio to like
Yeah. So
cement it, you know?
it's like Mars and Libra set up the fight, but I think when Mars enters Scorpio, we'll see more strategy. Maybe even we won't see it, right? So it makes me think of maybe Jimmy
Mm.
Kimmel, who we will get into, who I'm sure is mounting some defense, you know, and that's
Yeah.
like Mars in Scorpio territory where it's like, this is a strategy, this is what we will be doing, right? That kind of warfare, like, let's see this to the end, no matter how ugly
Hmm.
it gets. So I see the fights maybe intensifying for that reason, because Mars
Hmm.
will intensify when he's back home.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, we have Charlie Kirk's funeral happening on Sunday, the solar eclipse in Virgo.
Wow, I didn't know
Mars,
that. Yeah.
Mars moved into Scorpio immediately the day after. So on the other side, Chiron and Aries. Maybe let's talk about that for a second too.
Mhm.
When you think about a Mars in Libra, Mars ruling that Chiron in Aries, what is this sort of closed loop really saying here, this opposition?
Yeah. Well, so Chiron and Aries as the wound around like the right to exist, or like the wound about like self-sovereignty, or I'm here, right? So kind of like fighting for your right to just be alive.
Hmm.
The wound around literal violence. And so that makes me think of the news stories this week were literally quite violent, at least two
Hmm.
of the main ones that we're going to talk about today. Of course, the
Hmm.
ongoing genocide in Palestine. And then also just wounds around like the fight. And so one of the things I've been seeing speaking about the Emmys is like, why did it take so long for you guys to speak up? So again, it's another chironic
Hmm.
thing about like you're not doing activism right, maybe, or like you're too
Hmm.
late, maybe. Um, and so, yeah, when it deposits back to Mars in Libra, maybe this is something we'll get into later, but my question of like, am I the drama? CC, Cardi
Yes.
B. I think it's about like investigating the ways that we inflame things in our own relationships based on our own kind of self-wounding, and how we just bring that
Mm.
into the Libra fray, and we think we're fighting against something, but projection, mirroring, Libra, it's usually something that we're bringing in, taking to the
Mm.
tango and all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the symbolism of mirroring with Libra and the Chiron. Oh, absolutely. I definitely can take that for my own personal life this
Mhm.
week. So, obviously, the Emmys, big night. I keep bringing that up because, again, I feel like there were really powerful moments that almost like kicked off this week with the Mars, Libra, Chiron, Aries opposition. Also, because we had Venus in Leo trining, adding
Yeah.
some celebrity flair, loud drama. But the night was also a night of many firsts, which is very
Mm.
Chiron and Aries, like Mars and Libra, almost like healing first in, an artistic space, right? Like if you're claiming your identity as an artist, like this is a big moment to really feel like, wow, I'm here, I've made it. Like, we had obviously Seth Rogen, I have his chart up here. He was a
Mhm.
huge winner of the evening. And, when I even like lay out the trend, it's from a few days ago.
What did he win? Remind me.
He won Best Actor on top of like directing comedy, but this would have been his first official Emmy in an acting category as well. So,
Mhm.
he's like kind of been around, right, for a long time. But when we look at the chart, we see the Mars and Chiron like already like front and center. But I just found him to be one of like the really interesting stories from the evening. But there are other firsts of the evening, of course. We had Owen
Mm.
Cooper, youngest, I guess, youngest male, youngest kid, 15 years old, winning a supporting actor Emmy for Adolescence, which I don't know if you've ever watched that Netflix show, but
It was amazing.
that's
Yeah.
also very Mars, Libra, Chiron, and Aries, I
Yeah,
feel
like
like.
youth. Yes. Yeah, I watched it right when it came out a couple of months ago, but I remember being really taken by his performance. But yeah, so to see that theme come back around under
Hmm.
this opposition makes a lot of sense. The name in and of itself, you know?
Incredible. But we also had obviously Hannah Einbinder. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but obviously she's in Hacks. She had such an impassioned speech at the Emmys. Actually, you know what? Maybe let me pull up her chart. Her chart feels very right because she as you said earlier, a lot of people have said, why so late, maybe, right? Like people
Mm.
starting to speak up for Palestine more noticeably. We had Javier Bardem with the Kefia when he's always been speaking up for Palestine. But I would say Hannah has also been one of the stalwarts who has consistently been vocal about Palestine and her role as, a Jewish person in this fight. Of course, we don't have her time, which she could be a 29-degree Taurus sun, or she could be a
Wow.
0-degree Gemini, but regardless, she is still a Sun Pluto person.
Oh yeah, the opposition there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she's going to be someone who is hell bent on righteous transformation.
Oh,
Or who calls
absolutely.
things out, especially if that is a Gemini sun against like the Pluto and Scorpios, like actually communicating the atrocities. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And also, if we think about back on Sunday, Mars, 25 degrees, right, was also sextiling her Mars in Leo. Venus was on her Mars in Leo. So there was a lot of emphasis on stepping up as a leader and
Yeah.
speaking your piece, I guess.
Yeah. And feeling encouraged to do so. Yeah. By
Mm-hmm.
peers. Yeah.
Very interesting. We also had the South Node on her Chiron. We've got the Mercury Cazimi opposing Saturn in Pisces as well, right? So on two ways. One, this was the first time she's actually won the Emmy for this role, I believe. And two, when you think about Chiron and Virgo, there's another echo of Chiron, right? Getting activated, whether it's by transit or whether it's literally in her natal chart through all these energies at play.
Yeah, I didn't realize she's also in her Saturn return in
Mm-hmm.
Pisces. So obviously
Mm-hmm.
like big career moment. That's kind of part and parcel. But I always
Mm-hmm.
think Saturn in Pisces uses its accomplishments for more humanitarian aims in a lot of ways.
Mm,
So I
mm-hmm.
see why this was the moment, not only where she won, but she had to speak her piece.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me kind of wonder if, yeah, like, Gemini 0 degrees, Uranus and
Mhm.
Gemini right now are like really, because it was a more recent thing, but again, it would be very interesting to see whether she is a 29-degree Taurus or 0-degree Gemini, but she does have that Mercury in Gemini, so very empowered here. But we also had another winner from the evening. Tramell Tillman won Best Supporting Actor. He's the first Black supporting actor. I guess there's been only 13 nominations across, no, 13 Black actors accumulate 23 nominations over 5 decades. That is the stat.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I'm like, is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Apparently, the supporting drama actor category was formally established in 1970. And
Wow.
since then, 13 Black actors have accumulated 23 nominations over the course of 5 decades. And he is the
And that's
first.
just nominations.
That's just nominations. He's the first to win.
Crazy.
Isn't that insane? But that's Mars Chiron also, right? Like, I'm here, recognize me. And it is always almost going to be through art first. I feel
Yes.
like, I think Joseph Campbell said this, right? Like the myth is more pervasive than history.
I was going to say what you were saying about it's a first, and firsts can be both celebratory but also bittersweet because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, why did it take this long? And so you're in on one hand celebrating. Okay, so Venus in Leo was forming a trine to Chiron. But that activation of the wound, whether it's from Venus or otherwise, is going to be like something hurts here. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it is. Like, why did it take so long?
I sometimes have a hard time also with where I stand on that. I feel like that's also, Mercury just moved into Libra. Like I go back and forth all the time, like the optimistic me is like, yes, I'm celebrating the progress. I think Whoopi Goldberg said, I'm just glad you're here. Now we can keep going farther together. But
Sure.
then, yeah, the Chiron wound is very real. Like it is a deep stinging wound. And when you think about, again, representation and also currently with the way things are going in the country, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily reflect the progress. It's in fact opposite. There's two different realities going on.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, like him being the first winner both reflects, I love this, Mercury and Libra, like an accomplishment, but also the complete lack of diversity.
Mhm.
Like two things at once. And so it's like, yay, oh.
Yeah. But you know what? I think he was out of the category. I think he was up against other Severance
Oh, wow.
actors like John Turturro, and he
Mm,
like came out on top. Like he was, the creme de la creme. So I'm incredibly happy. I feel like it was overall you know, a very good night for quote unquote award shows because they're not,
Mhm.
again, the most politically active mediums. Like, I think I remember even the Me Too movement, right? Or Time's Up, they wore those
Yeah.
pins and that was the whole thing. And that was also a very, Venus retrograde in Aries, Chiron in Aries, like that energy is very much in the air. But since then, we haven't necessarily seen the same level of outspokenness. And so it was nice to see that happen. It was nice to see Colbert actually win his first talk show Emmy
Mhm.
ever on the brink of his cancellation. And then we also get that really impassioned speech from him about, the elevator. And if people are messing up the elevator, you gotta like give him hell and reach
Yeah.
higher even. So also very Mars, Libra, Chiron, and Aries.
Yeah, it's just so incredible how this Venus influence on Chiron is both so celebratory, like loving to see Colbert win, especially to
Mm-hmm.
have his moment, maybe when, his career's on the line. But it's like the speech made you hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? It's so
Mm-hmm.
bittersweet, it's so tender, it's so
Mm-hmm.
Chiron, it's so Mars, it's so pokey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bittersweet. Yeah, maybe, that is the theme of this week. Everything feels a little bittersweet.
There you go. Yeah. There's a fly in our honey, you know what I mean?
There's protein, which
There
is
you go.
very Aries
Mars is like, listen, is there nutrients in it? Then eat it. And Venus is like,
for surviving. It's fear factor. But obviously, big important night for the Emmys, but not only that. Okay, we move into the next day. There's a little bit of backlash, there's, with Hannah. It's like her stylist posting, her pictures without the pin. She's getting op-eds
oh,
against her
yikes.
about speaking out against the genocide, like all these very Mars and Libra polarizing things, right? They're two sides here. But obviously, Monday was also a pretty tough day. We awoke to the news of Trey Reed, and I'm not going to pull up, I don't actually know his birth time or anything, and we're not necessarily going to, dive too in depth into this because obviously there is a lot of heaviness here, but it
Yeah.
did feel important to highlight as part of the Mars Libra Chiron opposition when you're thinking about social inequity or social abuse or racism, even.
Yeah. And Mars is straightforwardly violence.
Mm-hmm.
Mars and Libra is also straightforwardly law enforcement and, you know, whether or not they choose to be transparent, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so Mars coming in classically, unfortunately, sometimes with these more overt significations of like true harm, harm to a
Mm-hmm.
person, harm to a movement, and harm to a community.
And just in case for folks who may not be privy, because there was a lot of news this past week grabbing the headlines. Trey Reed was a 21-year-old Delta State University student. He was found hanging from a tree, and obviously one that should already stir up some alarm bells. But also, there were conflicting messages from officials about
Hmm.
where his body was found, whether it was in his room or, as you told me earlier, by the pickleball court.
Yeah, I kept seeing references to a tree that was just behind the pickleball courts on this
Mm-hmm.
on this campus. And my
Mm-hmm.
note to you was like, pickleball to me just conjures like a completely different image. It's inherently an unserious word, but to have
Mm-hmm.
that keep coming up against the backdrop of this lynching or something that
Mm-hmm.
was just totally atrocious and still kind of under investigation
Mm-hmm.
is an exemplar of how sometimes sextiles work in these very unintuitive, even, subversive ways or kind of
Mm-hmm.
background kind of ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
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 and with
absolutely.
Chiron being activated between the sextile, it's like still it is not without its pain. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
something bleeding here.
Mm-hmm. And just to keep folks updated, I believe today Colin Kaepernick's team has said that they are going to be handling a separate investigation for the family. I know that
Wow.
Ben Crump, the attorney, has been enlisted. So this is
Mm.
obviously not over. This is coming during also eclipse season with Pluto out of bounds. The air for reformation is right, but it's also the idea of what's the struggle look like in as part of that process right now, but it is very timely the way everything is shaping up. And I mean, here's the thing, when I pull up this transit chart around that time, because I think they quoted like a 7:05, 7:45, whatever, like
Yeah.
It just feels very interesting to me personally. You've got Jupiter in Cancer again at the top of the chart. And like as we know, Jupiter doesn't necessarily have to um be good, right? I think you're like the big proponent this time around of Jupiter not bringing blessings, but I just think the Jupiter trine Lilith in Scorpio,
Mm.
and the North Node, and how it activates the nodes is very important to consider.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yes.
I didn't realize this was the exact chart, but
It was.
Neptune is right across from the ascendant-ish,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which,
Mm-hmm.
my research, like anything that highlights Neptune is highlighting, or it seems to be sometimes that these big things in Black culture seem to happen around interesting Neptune transits. And so there it is again. And so when I think about like us versus, or like, Colin Kaepernick, or like, the attorney versus, right, the law enforcement, or to figure out what's going on, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Black people are more the Chiron side of that. And
Yeah.
Mars and Libra coming up as like literally the establishment and law enforcement, again, like bobbing and weaving.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we had Mercury and Saturn this week also, obviously in the middle of the week. And this solar eclipse we're coming into over the weekend will feature Sun opposing Saturn at that same point, right? So almost as if whatever information we've received this week is not over yet. We get a new beginning around it. Over the weekend, and with Mars moving
Mhm.
into Scorpio, there is an investigation into truth.
Yeah. So the
If
sun coming around like to light it up, right? Or to
Mm-hmm.
give us a little bit more information. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Saturn opposite Mars, sorry, Saturn opposite the sun, or anything
Mm-hmm.
opposite Saturn is a moment of crystallization. So again, it's
Mm-hmm.
like the sun playing the role of spotlight, but also Saturn playing the role of like let's put it all together and make a
Mm-hmm.
picture and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, right? A lot of things happened this week, and
Mm,
yet it all happened under the dark of the moon. It is the darkest point in the sky right now. And so, when you think about the idea of the moon as it gains light,
uh,
illuminates more information, we're at the
yes.
darkest point. Next week,
Yes.
the light starts to creep back in.
Yeah.
So, again, we will see what unfolds from this. This is certainly not going to go away. And again, important to highlight, I think, to bring up because a lot of things are happening, but yet, like in this country, especially, like violence against Black people is like in perpetuity and it needs
Yeah.
to stop,
Mhm.
period. So, moving on to some other lighter news, we're going to do a little ping pong because this is the emotional whiplash we are
We're
in this
doing Libra. We're
era.
doing both and back and
Both.
forth, sweet
Yes,
sour.
and so you actually clued me into this week early also. We get the news that Keke Palmer and Sean Evans shared a little smoochy
Little smoochy
smooch,
smoochy, a little kissy kissy.
which I'm not gonna lie, the amount of squeals I emitted when I saw the sequence of, oh my God, he had shot his shot a long time ago, and then now they are kissing, and she's like done some flirty things that I'm like, this is a rom com. This is a rom com.
So good. Such a point of levity, right? To kind of help us process the week.
Oh
So
my
yeah, I wanted to
gosh.
talk about this in terms of, again, like sextiles are very cutesy. And so this is also something that happened under the Mars Venus sextile.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at this as pretty straightforwardly fun, right? These are two media personalities. Kiki is such a darling. She's so fun. But again, we just can't ignore the fact, because astrology is always pulling in everything. This was a Chiron moment too. And so audience is thinking, how the hell are we going to tie this in? Well, quite lightly, or quite kind of literally, I looked at the comments on like what you were talking about, like the whole video that showed like
Yeah.
since 2017 until now, some things on TikTok and even on YouTube. And the consensus was, like you said, like squee, you know what I mean? And people are like, this video healed me, or like, this was the best thing I've seen all week. Hey, that's Chiron. That's a moment of release, a
Mm-hmm.
moment of catharsis that is
Mm-hmm.
stewarded in by the energies of Venus and Leo and Mars and Libra. And we get like, not a meet cute, but like the rom-com happening, and how that in its own way kind of helps us
Mm-hmm.
process the other wounding, right? That's going on. Or it's like a little bit of a balm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I'm gonna actually even say one step further. Mars, Libra,
Hmm.
Chiron, and Aries. I mean, look, I'm mixed, you know. So for me, I'm always gonna end up with someone who is not my kin or who looks like me. Like it's the idea that interracial coupling is still quite taboo. I mean, I know the looks I get on the street when I walk with my partner, so it's
Mhm.
kind of like to see this media representation of a white man and a black woman, I think is so Mars Libra opposing Chiron and Aries, especially in this country.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's always going to be some, and I was kind of waiting for it in the comments. I was like, who's going to say something negative here? I was
Hmm.
surprised that I didn't find it, but even kind of like the holding your breath, because I know
Hmm.
how that feels as well. Yeah, that's all Mars. It's all like it's a little bit uncomfortable, or it could be taken some way, right? We don't know.
Hmm.
So yeah, there was again like there's a little bit of that vinegar that is
Hmm.
within it, especially when you think about it in the context of our political landscapes. Like, who knows what they will come after next? Is it Loving
Hmm.
versus Virginia? If so, let us enjoy Kiki and Sean
Yes. Also, I mean, it's really in
for
the
now.
air
Yeah.
for now. It's in the air because obviously, you don't watch Love Island, but Nico Landria has been like such a big fan phenomenon. And a big
Yes.
part of that is Landria has gone on, podcast Modern Love and talked about how, it's so nice to see a black woman like adored, revered,
Mm,
loved, like thought of as super attractive, right? Like all these
yes.
things and idealized. And yeah. Absolutely. Like it's insane. It's
That is so
insane.
beautiful. That connection of Kiki and Alondria being like idealized. And again, it's like, what a relief. Like, because of course, like you and I are like, this has never been a problem for us. But like media, right, or like the powers that be, right? It for
Mhm.
us, right? It's still this moment of like bittersweetness. Like, I know that's right. Like, yes, Black woman, right? They are worth being longed for.
Yes. I mean, also, here's the thing, Kiki, so her chart is on the outer wheel only because she has technically the C rating
Yes.
and Sean has the A rating. Thank you, SZA, by the way, because SZA, I think, was the one who
Yes.
asked for Sean's info and the astrology podcast got it. So here we are. But I I think it was also really, for a woman to be forward, right? Mars and Libra,
Yes.
subverting social constructs of like dating etiquette, like she
Yes, that's
went for
also
it.
Venus Leo. Venus Leo
Yes.
is like shoot your shot, like risk vulnerability, be seen, but risk
Yes.
vulnerability. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know whether this kiss is going to take them into another category or a relationship, but I do think it is interesting, right, that it happened this week. And we just said there's a whole new beginning coming out the other side of this weekend. So who knows? But she is going through her Mars return.
Yes, and
Mars,
you know what?
Jupiter, and Libra.
I was gonna say, yeah. And yeah, you keep like bringing up things like this is seeming a little bit more important now the more that we talk about it, but race relations have never been, I think, worse ever
Mhm.
since recent events happened.
Yes.
And so yeah, to have this moment of just pure cuteness between a white man and a black woman is just like, just yes, like let the relief wash over me for now. It's
Totally.
beautiful.
And I think the reason why I felt like, yeah, there's more to say about them because
Yeah.
even in her chart, right? Like she has the Venus in Cancer at 28 degrees, which I'm a Cancer at 28. So
Mhm.
Kiki, if you hear this, Camille and I love you and we
We
will
do.
read you all day every day, but in the best way. But she also has the Sagittarius moon, which I have a Sagittarius moon. And so when I think about Venus in Cancer, Sagittarius moon, there is a connection with family belonging, but also the
Mm.
idea of expanding the limits of what that means and maybe finding
Oh.
truth outside of family or kin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like finding familiarity from all over. And I love that
Hmm.
it's in their sixth house and the way that they met is through work.
Yeah, they're both
Right? Through
cancer.
Sean's work. Yeah.
They're both Cancer risings,
Yes.
okay, everyone? They're both Sag moons. They're both Cancer risings. They both have Earth, suns. It's
Mhm.
cute.
Super hot.
It's so cute. But what do you think of that Saturn nodal conjunction situation? So
Okay.
Sean has Saturn in Sag, and it's on Kiki's nodal axis. Zaddy.
Yeah, pretty zaddy. I was gonna say like so him coming in as like a again a crystallizing force, so helping her kind of delineate of what her North Star is in this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, like through his Sag energy, through that Saturn Sag energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I made a video about this and I was like, you know what? It's interesting to also think about when when you look at her chart and that Venus and Sag, when you look at his chart, right? You're maybe not to say looking for similar themes, but it's interesting to have that Venus in Taurus, 29 degrees, so super super empowered. It makes sense. He has like a show
Mm-hmm.
about food,
Mm-hmm.
but also the Lilith in Gemini and the Chiron in Gemini in the 11th, almost as if like, what are people going to say? Or like the, the fear of perception, curation. And I just thought it was so striking that her South Node was on that Lilith
Mm.
in the 11th. And Venus also is out of sign. So it's almost like adding that extra symbolism of an out of sign relationship or someone that isn't from the same race and how that is perceived by society, you
Yeah,
know?
that's good. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm obsessed with them. I
Me
love
too.
them and I want all the good things to happen. I mean, even the Mars Uranus, like they have enough excitement together and there's enough like comfort and familiarity. It's like
Yeah, they're so
ideal.
fun. Yeah. They're so fun together, I feel like too.
Gosh,
I almost kind
well,
of don't want to see it work because I just want it to
no, don't
I
say
don't want
that.
it to go into like a relationship and then it's like, oh, and then they broke up. It's just, it's like, oh, it became real. I like where we are
Yeah.
now. But it's okay if they get together. I mean, their charts may be pulling them together. I think it's beautiful. But yeah, all the best to them. We'll see what happens.
Crossing fingers. Okay, so literally that was all on Monday, September 15th.
Wow.
Oh, actually, not, you know what? Not even the end of it. So if I missed a big event from this week, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm just doing my best trying to keep
Yes.
track of everything. I did think it was very interesting that we also had, all right, I did pull up Nick Cannon's chart. This is the last thing I want to say about that Monday. Because he had this Breakfast Club interview, and I just felt it was so profound. It was so healing in a weird way because he came on to talk about how he was clinically diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. He talked about
Mm,
his divorce from Mariah Carey. He talked about basically how he responded to the trauma of divorce by literally like hooking up with all these women and then having all these kids. Like he was really deep in the Mars Libra Chiron activation. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, of course it makes sense. He has like that whole Libra stellium in the fifth house. So there is, when you think about again, like narcissistic personality disorder, which I don't think a lot of people understood that he actually did get diagnosed, or he got it checked out for
mm,
himself. But the fact that like Mars and Chiron are literally on that like Pluto this
yeah.
week, absolutely like insanity, absolutely insanity. So I just feel like I'm a softie in the sense that I can be very hard, but if someone
Mm,
is willing to come up and speak about, like, let me like talk about my experience and this is my perception of it and this is the hurt I caused and this is also my part in my own hurt, like, I'm gonna be like, okay, like, let me give
totally.
you a little bit,
Yeah, that's
but
human. That's human. Yeah.
absolutely.
This is so like maybe beyond the point. Like narcissistic personality disorder. So I like am looking at it right now in
Mhm.
the chart and I'm like,
Yeah.
could that be like a sun moon conjunction thing? Like just not being able to see beyond yourself. Like self as a complete black hole. You
Hmm.
know what I'm talking about?
I think
Anyway,
that's in
just curious.
I think that's really interesting to consider, honestly, because, when you think
Hmm.
about the new moon, right, there's like in a new moon phase, there's a lot about
Yeah.
eagerness and there's a lot about like you having to have that enthusiasm to go after stuff, which means you can't really take other people's opinions into consideration,
That's
right?
right. That's
On
right.
some level. It's not saying you should be a narcissist, but you can't like it whenever you try to manifest things, right? How many people have said don't like share openly with people until
Mhm.
like it's more stabilized, it's come into a little more fruition because you don't want their stuff to like fuck up your vibe.
Sure.
That feels very new moon.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the fifth house of just like complete self-interest as well.
Mhm.
But it's Libra, so it's sexual. Interesting. I mean, I didn't
Mhm.
know about that diagnosis until like just now, or when you
Yeah.
told me a little bit earlier today, but also just now.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense with the Mercury and Scorpio, Mars, Uranus in the sixth. Like there is a lot of truth about mental health stuff. But also of course Jupiter in the fifth, the fact that like you solve your problems at Virgo in maybe not the most efficient way, i.e. like by having
Ooh,
children.
that's a really great way of looking at Jupiter and Virgo. Like, this is not efficient, bro. I love that. Like, it's
For
not
your
efficient
dear.
and you keep doing it. Like the way that Jupiter just expands and overdoes. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, literally. So all that happened on Monday. We now move into literally like Tuesday, September 16th. And what I would say is like the big event from Tuesday was Luigi Mangione, or one of the big events, Luigi Mangione getting the terrorism charges dropped finally. He
Do you
still
notice
has
how many Leo risings we're dealing with right now?
I'm saying Venus and Leo is on display.
Yeah.
On display. But just to also to clarify, Luigi, I believe like the time that's floating around is
Okay.
12:13 p.m., which would still make him a Leo rising. Just FY, just letting you know. But it's still alleged and we don't know for sure. But I mean, here's the thing with Mr. Luigi, obviously at the alleged unaliving back in December 2024, that was a Mars retrograde station. And you have another now Mars activation, Mars Chiron on his Saturn here
Mm.
as part of the equation. You're kind of like, wow, every time there might be like a Mars or Chiron activation, right? Like it just feels prominent for him, especially because of his Aries placements. But
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
surprised to see that with Saturn involved in the ninth house of law and court and order, would see that a charge got dropped and not like, not like super punishment oriented. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's the grace of Jupiter moving through the 12th. Like, let's release you
Mm.
of this thing.
Interesting. Interesting.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of people are praying for him, St. Luigi. Those candles, my God, they're being lit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting to think about, Mars opposing Saturn, right? Like when you think about a malefic approaching you in the chart, right? And this is like kind of the big thing, even with Seth Rogen, like malefics were on his son Pluto and he
That's
like had
right.
a big night. Mars and Chiron, ouchie, potentially. Maybe with Venus, some good ouchie.
Yes.
But on Saturn. That would naturally be like all right, guys, let's brace for something.
Yeah, I would be like, watch out. Yeah.
Watch out for some freedom. I'm just kidding.
I
But
know that's so random. Like, how do you see that coming in? I mean, maybe Venus just offering her dose of sweetness there, but yeah, the Saturn and Aries and Chiron right there just feels so heavy.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. The nodes are activating his Jupiter too. So you want to talk about the extra blessing. He's getting that Jupiter trine. Like
Oh, yes, I see that.
he's getting that really nice hit. So I'm just like, okay, maybe there's like some alleviation because here's the thing. It's not to say that the death penalty is still off the table.
That's
To be
right.
very clear, these were state charges that were dropped. It does not mean that the federal charges have been dropped. The death penalty is very much on the table. This, I think, has reduced the sentence to 25 years with parole rather than life with no parole. Is my understanding. But again,
Wow.
just to confirm, the death penalty is still on the table.
Well, this makes you kind of understand the limits of benefic planets, right? So Jupiter
Mm-hmm.
was gifting him some things, both transit Jupiter and his own Jupiter getting like, juiced up, but it didn't take away the reality of like Chiron on Saturn. Like you're still in prison
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yes.
still may die behind bars, but here's this alleviation that is alleviation, but not really alleviation, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. It's interesting because I was looking up out of bounds stuff because obviously I just had this chat with Mar on Pluto out of bounds, which we again are in Pluto out of bounds times right now through like basically the end of November for this go around. And what I looked up was Luigi at the alleged assassination was Venus had just moved back in bounds. Venus was out of bounds and she just like literally that same day. And so now Pluto's out of bounds when we get this court dropping, or at least the judge dropping these charges. And
Mhm.
it's the idea that Mars will be, I think, out of bounds when Luigi goes back to court in December
Wow.
again. So he's got a lot to do with when planets move in out of bounds. And that's like an important thing to track with him specifically.
Yeah. Are
It
you
actually,
seeing out of bounds planets, or I see out of bounds planets as planets that don't really play by the rules? So
yeah,
they're
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
rogue. Yeah, they're kind of errant,
Exactly.
intensified in that way.
Well, he only has his Hygeia out of bounds, which is actually hilarious when you think about the healthcare mission of it all.
Wow. Look at astrology. We weren't even trying to find that.
But it does make me wonder if, when you have an out of bound planet in your chart, right? Like,
Yeah.
even if it's not the planet that's going out of bounds, are you all of a sudden now tapped into that frequency and it
Sure.
kind of turns you on a little more, you know?
Absolutely. That's
Mm.
that's something rich to look into.
Do you have out of bounds planets, Camille?
I do not. I am firmly here on Earth. No, I do not. I don't think I do. Do you?
I do. I have my moon is out of bounds, first of all. Sag moon out
Ooh.
of bounds.
So you
Watch
thirsty.
out. Watch the
You
fuck
have an
out.
appetite for things, for life.
Uh,
Yeah.
also my Lilith.
Okay. So I haven't looked beyond the traditional, not the traditional, but the 10
Hmm.
planets. I might have something else out of bounds. I'll let you know.
Maybe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please do. All I know is like, I'm like, do I think I am? And then I'm like, oh, wait, I totally am. Like, who is making the jump from finance to astrology in like an overnight thing? Like,
Wow, that's so you.
that is out of bounds in action in the best
Yes.
possible way, I would like to think.
Yeah.
Um, the other important thing that happened on September 16th, as Mars and Chiron were perfecting the opposition, Venus was perfecting its trine to Chiron. Ben and Jerry's. We had a resignation.
Mm-hmm.
Dear, who was it? Was it Jerry?
I think it
Jerry.
was.
Jerry quit. Jerry made Ben post his goodbye speech or his
That's
resignation.
so Mars and Libra. Like,
Like
would we do this?
I had to look at the post for a second. I was like, wait, are we talking about Ben or are we talking
Yeah, I
about
was
Jerry?
confused. Yeah, it was like, help me separate from the company."
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it. Obviously, against the backdrop of everything going on, like we see why
Mhm.
this is happening. But this is another one of those things where it's like, okay, but also Mars Venus sextile with, Mars answering to Venus and Leo. And so we
Mhm.
get ice cream. That's what I just want to say, folks. That's it. Maybe that's the sextile.
Maybe that's the Is it cute? Is it cute for you sextile?
It's about an ice cream company, which is a Venus Mars delight, I will say. But
And
again, Chiron. So, what is the greater tapestry of context we're dealing with? Oh, authoritarianism. Okay.
great, great. How does an ice cream company survive authoritarian? But social justice values survive in an authoritarian regime. It's
Yeah.
interesting because there's this whole free Magnum situation, right? Like Magnum is slated to be, I think, listed on the stock exchange or something in November, and so they want to get freed before that, and so there's a whole interesting Mars Scorpio that's coming to play over the course of the next month, leading into the listing. So
Getting
wish
free from Unilever, like so they don't
yes,
have.
Magnum is the ice cream like umbrella under Unilever.
Got it.
Yes, exactly. Which is devastating because I love Magnum bars and I had to give up so many things. God damn it,
Yeah. Oh my
everyone.
God.
Pull your shit
Yes.
together.
Moon, Jupiter. So I looked at the post of like the Ben and Jerry stuff, and a lot of
Yeah.
people like I'm buying ice cream in protest or throwing away ice cream. Ice cream was part of it, the consumption of ice cream. So again,
This is the
June,
tea party. This
yeah,
is the new tea party. We're pissed, so we're throwing our ice cream
right.
away.
It's like food goods, which again is just so also Cancer, Moon, Jupiter.
Yes. I mean, here's the thing. This Mars and Libra, Chiron and Aries, it would be hard. You talked about how there's so much about Palestine, obviously, in the air. And you can't help but think about Mars, Libra, Chiron, and Aries as like a huge symbolism around that. But also, I don't know which side is representing of what. Because earlier you said, okay, Chiron is represented here. You can see this come out through Mars and Libra here. But with Palestine, it almost feels difficult for me to understand which like what symbol is representing who in this
Yeah.
context, you know?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think part of that is because Chiron is answering back to Mars. So it's like really hard to like separate them from one another.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about that with respect to like Pluto and Aquarius versus these Leo planets. Like who's Leo in the situation and who's Aquarius? Who's the
Mm-hmm.
Pluto in Aquarius? And I see
Mm-hmm.
Pluto in Aquarius both as the tech oligarchy, like consolidating power, but Pluto in Aquarius is also then the democratization of power and all of
Mm-hmm.
people like you and me, right, being able to fight against Leo things, which is like solar king center of the universe. And so
Yeah.
there is a world where it's just like both parts. It just describes maybe a different part of the fight, I think. And so, yeah,
Mm.
I've also had that thing of like, which side is which side? And I see it as
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Both?
both with this, yeah, which I feel is what astrology is. It's like so all encompassing. It's really hard to split. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I know there's like astrologers like Dr. Ali Olomi who, they've like done a lot of research so they can maybe even like identify certain symbols if, you're thinking about a case study or a country and like what that represents. But if I'm looking at it from the pure third, like mundane, just how things are playing out across the board, it is very Uranus and Gemini where it's like,
Mhm.
it is everything is multifaceted. Like there's no one again singular interpretation around who's representing what. And you do, I mean, I've been posting some videos lately obviously about like Charlie Kirk and things like that, and more from like a I'm curious about what's happening in the chart perspective, but you still see the comment section, and I have my opinions about freedom of speech, but then you see the comment section taking a totally different interpretation of it, and you're like, wow,
Yeah, so
it can't.
like so many timelines or realities existing at once in a way that's becoming clearer than it has ever been before.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely. Now, it's interesting because the day after, of course, we had Mercury and Saturn officially like perfect their opposition in the backdrop of Mars Chiron. Venus trine Chiron. Venus is starting to separate from Chiron. And that's the day we get that really big Palestine night at Wembley, which is like one of the hugest fundraisers, I think, that I've seen for Palestine up to this point. It was right around the same day, I think, the UN officially the commissioned a report saying Israel is like officially committing genocide, and it's the same day that Bernie Sanders
Mm.
finally acknowledges this as a genocide, and he delivered a whole statement on his website. You can go check it out if you're curious, but it's almost like the Mercury Saturn really, as you said, Saturn bringing the crystallization to the fight that's in at
Yeah.
place. Hmm.
Absolutely. I see this as a moment of what's not clocking to you. Like Mercury opposite Saturn is like a moment of clocking or sobriety or like reality check or like even Mars Libra Aries and Mars is playing the role of like look at this thing. So I feel like Mercury with Saturn here, yeah, it's like this moment of like, oh, it's official now, right? According
Hmm.
to different state actors and governments, and organizations. But yeah, I guess it feels more real to some people now. It's been real for a very long time.
It's kind of wild. I mean, Bernie has talked, like, here's the thing. It's so interesting. He's been like in support, or not in support, but he's always played both sides a little bit around how he wants to talk about it. But when I look
Ooh,
at his,
Venus Libra. Uh-huh.
literally, right? Like the fact that we are having all these transits, Mars, Libra, but that's like right on his Venus and Libra.
Yeah, and Mars is like, be for real. Like, look at this. Yeah. His own Mars opposition too. Yeah.
Oh my God. Actually, I never realized that he had a retrograde Mars opposing Venus, which I guess makes sense in the court with his career in the Democratic Party. Like he's
Mm,
always the odd one out and he always has to fight but wants to belong with the party.
yes.
Yeah,
The
wow.
lunar trigger of his Chiron, right? So moon on his Chiron that day, at least. So again,
Hmm.
bringing in the Chironic wound a bit, right? So it's showing up in the transits, but it's also showing up in people's charts.
Oh my God. Yeah, wow. I didn't even realize that.
Oh,
Also nodal.
Chiron is on his Mars too. Whoa.
Yes. Oh my God. Nodal opposition on his, oh my God, does Mercury Cazimi on his
Yes.
Neptune?
Okay. See?
He
There's a
was
lot of things. Yeah, I
enlightened.
was going to say a lot of things are rising to the surface.
He was enlightened. And you know what? As much as I'm gonna be in the camp of where were you and what took you so long, when you see the activation in the chart, right? You can't help but think, okay, yeah, you're having a big moment for yourself
Mm.
as well. And Chiron and Pluto conjunction in Leo, that's not an easy thing to break, honestly. Like you're a stubborn mofo, you know?
Ooh,
So
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You can
so
see why in the chart now is when they're speaking up. Yeah. So it
mhm.
helps you contextualize it.
I think it helps me build a lot more empathy, honestly, because if I did not have the chart to be like, okay, yeah, I see the activation, it's crystallizing, as you said, I would probably be like, okay, bruh, cool, and I would be maybe more dejected. But now I'm like, okay, work with this momentum. This is
Yes,
here.
absolutely momentum. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of
Absolutely.
things felt to be like maybe reaching ahead or like a pressure point and it came over. And so now it's like
Mm.
let's keep it moving.
Okay, so fun thing now. I feel like we talked about some serious things. LOL. Cardi
Oh,
B's
right.
album, Cardi B's Bebe. Cardi had a very busy week. Or Cardi's had a busy year, I feel
Cardi
like.
has had a busy life. Do you think? Mrs. Aries rising with moon on the ascendant. I was thinking about what were the conditions that made it take her 7 years to follow
Mhm.
up? First, there's like a Mercury Saturn square, which is like her writing process is just going to be slow. But then it
Mhm.
also made me think like girl is juggling so much. And that's the energy of Aries. Like life is just characterized by constant movement and
Yes.
family, right? So the moon bringing in like the fact that she's had three kids in the interim and is pregnant with her fourth.
Yeah, I mean, she has this cardinal T square, right? Like that's also on the angles. And
Spicy.
when you think about a full moon bebe, she's a Libra sun, Aries moon, naturally that invites a sense of relationships are complicated in this
Totally.
lifetime.
Yes.
Mom and dad opposing.
Yeah. Now I see that also in Megan the Stallion's chart. That's what they have in common.
Oh, very interesting. WAP's also on the
Yeah.
album, which
Yeah, it is.
I'm actually really glad. I'm glad she made that decision to include it because that without a home would be criminal.
Ooh, yeah, good point. It needs to belong somewhere. Like that needs to belong to a body of work. Yes.
Mars and Cancer. She has to find a home for her
For
artistic
everything.
babies. But I mean, here's the thing. Obviously, this year we had a really intense Mars retrograde in Cancer and Leo, which never
Mm.
again, please, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was stationing at 17 degrees, so that was stationing on her Mars.
Woof. What was
This
she going through at the time? Her divorce with Offset and
Yeah, they were going
yeah.
back and forth with that. And then she had her whole lawsuit, which
Yes.
delivered some amazing press recently and responses. She is her chart. Like
She's such a
it's
genius.
so good.
I don't think she knows that she is because it's like Aries genius. It's like responding to the whim of the moment, which is
Hmm.
instant. But yeah, she's good.
I mean, she's got that South Node in the third house, right? She is
Yes.
naturally going to be quick and in Gemini.
And in Gemini. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And Mercury ruling that, meaning she's going to land the zingers. Not only just like a tit for tat Aries brat, but like a I'm a nail and knock you out
That's right. Yeah. And I'm
as
like
well.
saying things because they're funny, but they also hurt. And that's Mercury, like
Hmm.
in Scorpio. Yeah.
Have you listened to the album
I listened
yet?
to the
Like,
first half of it. I stopped to prepare for this podcast, but from what I've heard, I love
yeah.
it and I want to finish the rest of it hopefully tomorrow, but I'm glad that she's
Yeah.
back. And again, if you look at the transits, to me this is another one of those moments of like Venus and Leo, not even though it wasn't the exact trine, but Venus and Leo kind of like delivering us some levity from this difficult week and life. And Cardi
Hmm.
B is just such a bright, charismatic person and her music is like confidence inducing. So I feel
Yeah.
her being wrapped into this as well.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with Venus opposing Lilith in the 11th, because it may, because in the 11th house, right, when you think about your fans, your community, the Lilith in Aquarius in that 11th could represent the hurt that the fans are experiencing in the context of like stuff happening in the world, right? And as you said, the Venus in Leo acting as
Giving
that
wisdom.
bomb.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Cardi's mom, because the moon, the fact that she's got the moon on the ascendant, right? Like she naturally operates as a mother-like figure, whether it's like, you're using it in slang or whatever, whether she is an actual mom, but she kind of operates as mom and she's gonna stand up for herself and she's gonna lead this example of, I'm taking care of my family, so like I'm gonna
Mhm.
be outspoken and don't come for my money. Like she's also, I mean, I think she had like a thing with Bernie Sanders, right? Like she was also politically active. She's
Yes,
still
Libra.
politically active.
Yes.
Yes. Now, how do you feel about Stefan Diggs? How do you feel about this couple?
Okay, so as someone who doesn't really like steep myself in celebrity like couple lore. I know that
Yes.
Offset treated her poorly and that they were together for a while, that he had a Sagittarius stellium and Venus in Pluto. And I know from you that Stefan Diggs also has a Sagittarius stellium with Venus in Scorpio with Pluto as well. And obviously Cardi has Venus Scorpio with Pluto as well. So she
Ah!
has a type. She likes intense folks. And I was telling you actually today that I don't think that's bad if
Mm-hmm.
both people are coming into the relationship with an awareness of shadows. Because then you can work it out with someone who has equal amount of capacity to hold that kind of depth and healing work as you do. But should anyone be unhealed or just like, things lingering, this is just
Ah.
such a I don't know, tinderbox for drama and intensity that feels like love, but that in the long term is maybe corrosive. So she's
Oh,
working through some stuff, and obviously I want it to work out.
yeah.
But the patterning here is wild. And you can tell,
Right?
yeah, you can tell her soul is like
We
trying to
gotta
get
learn.
there.
We gotta learn this lesson, baby. I'm like, what
Yes,
is the lesson? Am I the drama?
that's the
That
lesson.
is the lesson.
Part of it, man. Like, what am I bringing into this that keeps making it radioactive? And it's
It's
not even a bad thing. Like, maybe you just need someone who can stand radioactivity.
maybe. It's interesting because, again, I didn't even make the connection for it until I saw a clip today where Stefan had apparently ordered Cardi a flat truck full of roses or flowers or something. And it just made me realize, wait a minute, didn't Offset like drop a whole bunch of flowers in her home? Like it was like she had the whole camera. Like I'm like, wait a
That felt
minute.
normal for them. Like, he was always like showering her with so much that Venus Scorpio
Yes.
intensity.
Oh my God, absolutely. And SAG, like you got to do it big, right? Like
Totally.
loud and ambitious. But um worth noting that it Stefan might not only be having a baby with Cardi B at this moment in time. You know, he allegedly is, I think he's suing a baby mama from like earlier this year who alleges that she is pregnant with his child. So you're kind of running into the same, not to say it's the exact similar situation from Offset and his infidelity and but this isn't infidelity, but it's complicated, right? It's not
Absolutely.
straightforward. When I look at Cardi's chart, just to even like pull the transits from a couple of days ago, I was wondering to myself, I was like, okay, well, we have a new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, and that's out of sign with her Jupiter, that 29 degrees. Jupiter rules her ninth house, of visions, of future, but also her 12th house. But I'm like, is she letting go of the past, really? Is she really
Mm,
entering a new chapter, or is she kind of co-opting into the same patterns effectively? Because this south node, this eclipse, there's a lot of south node pull,
that's right.
right? And so it can feel hard maybe to change some patterns as part of the
Mm,
process. So
mhm.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but looking at the chart, I'm like, hmm.
Yeah. I'm hopeful because she deserves it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I want it to work out. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there are just things in the chart that are worrisome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Cardi,
But
if you
that doesn't
also
mean that it could be bad. As we talked about with
mm-hmm.
Seth Rogen, the things that look troublesome can also be great. So we will see.
It's very positive. Well, okay, this brings us officially to I would say the most striking event of the week, from a media perspective. I feel like, there's always like one singular story that really is like all of a sudden everyone's like, stop what you're doing. This just happened. And
Yes,
this
yeah.
week, that Mercury Saturn reality check moment belongs to none other than Jimmy Kimmel. Technically, he delivered his not so controversial, maybe controversial. When I read it, it certainly was not controversial statements on Monday. That really fabulous day we started the week with. But really, only Wednesday by Wednesday, we get the word that his show was taken off the air indefinitely. Were you surprised? Were you shocked?
Yeah, that was some scary information. That was one of those things where I'm like, I got pulled back into this timeline.
Yeah.
That is, it's just really scary and it is symptomatic of something larger that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting, and I don't mean to sound bitter, but it's interesting when it's happening to like other people who you perceive to be in power also, like shutting down a white
Mm-hmm.
male voice. That makes me
Mm-hmm.
as a black woman feel not that great. You
Yeah.
know, like because I'm already persona non grata, and this is a rich
Right.
white man who they're censoring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't at all surprising. And this is my first time seeing the chart activation. So walk me through
Mm-hmm.
what you see.
Oh my God, yeah, a couple of things. So obviously the most striking would be the Mars on the South Node.
Yeah.
This is something he's probably navigated before around how free is his speech and how curated does he really want to be? How does he want to toe the line? And I know he's been historically very open and vocal, maybe like anti-Trump, but also I would say like with his kids' healthcare stuff, like he was very vocal about the healthcare movement as well. And so, but here's the thing, there's always like criticism, right? Like, are you really saying what you mean? And so when I think about Mars in the South Node, I see this idea of a challenge from like the social powers that be,
Mhm.
and then maybe a severance, right? Because he's effectively gotten cut out from the network. But also, I think about that being like, let me go build up more courage. Like, there has to be a challenge because something that I've deeply feared has now come true and it's taken away from me. So, what am I going to do now to fight back? Because there's also Lilith on his Scorpio sun.
Mm.
And if I pull up his solar arcs, we actually have Pluto on there too. So there's again to me this idea of like something getting taken hostage with the Persephone symbolism and Pluto and Lilith all there. But the idea of it's taken away so that you can fight for it back because you haven't actually stepped up to use your voice in the way it needs to be done.
Wow. Yeah. And that is being emphasized again by this fact that transiting Sun is on his natal Pluto and
Mm-hmm.
opposing his natal Chiron in
Mm-hmm.
Pisces. Yeah, so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that underworld theme or the theme of kind of like bumping heads with power, like even that Mercury and Scorpio that it has being squared by Pluto and Aquarius now, I see that as maybe being a really protracted legal battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
Right on his Mercury. That Mercury, it's insane, right? Like you're like, oh, well, this isn't over because we literally see Mars, boop, hop, skip, and a step away to Mercury. Mercury ruling that Uranus and Pluto. I mean, what's also interesting is, Mars in Capricorn does rule that Scorpio stellium of his.
Mm,
Mars also in the chart does square the nodes. So
mm,
when you think about Mars in Capricorn, that's super empowered, and there's a lot about legacy. And when you think about the fact that he's going through his Saturn return right now, also, what do I really want my legacy to be? And when you're thinking about Saturn on the moon, I'm not looking for that external validation. I'm looking for my self-nurturance, right? And I also am looking to be the adult in the room. I have to
yeah.
mature.
I also imagine that this is a moment where he wants to model for his kids the type of father he is, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like what he is going to stand for, what he's going to fight for sake of their, adult reality maybe being a little bit different. Mhm.
Totally. I do think it is interesting that how we just said malefics don't have to be so bad, they can really bring about some really empowering activation in your chart if you've put in the work. They maybe feel a little more difficult because it's challenging you to do some difficult work, but in the not so sweet way.
And Holy
Wild
Saturn
side.
return, he's pretty much started that as well. So,
Yes. And you know what? It is interesting because Saturn's now obviously back in Pisces. This eclipse features the Saturn in Pisces and that Sun Saturn opposition. I can't imagine a situation where, like, sure, you're going to fight and you're going to sue, and, you know, we're going to see how that works out. But I, I don't know. I just feel like there's a move here around how we should shake up the way things have already been done, right? Because also if you think about, right, like the idea of habits and the idea of maybe letting go of the way we have done things. And what if that, with Uranus and Gemini and trining Pluto and Aquarius means there's a shakeup in the way we deliver our information or the medium that we deliver our information through. And that's pushing him to, like, a more podcast or a more independent type of outlet. Public broadcasting, that's not something that's for the
that's safe.
people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do
I
we
also
involve?
yeah, that the ruler of his south node, Venus in Libra, is receiving a trine from that Pluto and from
Mm-hmm.
that Uranus. So yeah, it's about like this is a moment of like pivot where what you may have done before, both in prior lives and in this life, to like advocate for your voice or like do the battle. It's like the terrain has shifted maybe a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, and that fight's going to look a little bit different. And that I think, can be something that's ultimately supportive because we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about trines. But as we know, who
Yeah.
knows? We just been anything could happen.
Who knows at this point, honestly? I mean, here's the thing also, that was an interesting day because South Park was supposed to air their episode, but they could not pull it together
Oh,
in
that's
time
true.
for the episode, which is also very Mars Chiron opposition, like the perfection and doing it right and then not doing anything and then procrastinating and nothing happens. But
Yeah.
we will be getting it next week. Jon Stewart came back online yesterday night to uh basically talk about how to rise against a dictator, so the entertainment talk show hosts I think are gonna maybe band together in some way, right, in this fight because there's only so few of them. So I think what Seth Meyers is next on the list, right, Jimmy Fallon, like Trump's already called out these late night talk show hosts, but Jon Stewart being not on a main broadcasting, being on, Comedy Central or wherever his broadcast is, just feels safer because it's private rather than public right now.
Yeah. It also feels like it makes sense that these late night hosts would be kind of like the front line of this like media censorship because they are the perfect combination of politics and entertainment. Like their
Mm,
entertainment in a lot of ways is telling us the news, like what has happened. So yeah, it
yeah.
makes sense that this is happening to them. Yeah.
I asked Emily, who was on to talk about South Park. This is something Trump has said. So I'm not in the business of necessarily being like, Trump said this, but I
Yeah.
did think it was an interesting point that didn't necessarily tell the whole story. But who's getting their information from these late night talk show hosts? But like as a genuine question, because I don't watch any of these shows. You know what I
I will
mean?
say late night with John Oliver, I learn a lot because he goes
Yes.
specifically into niche interests as like the main part of the
Yeah.
programming. But yeah, when it comes to reporting on things that, happened in the week, it's like, yeah, I saw that scrolling on Instagram. Yeah, like so
Mm-hmm.
the interest of like who's getting their news from these people that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Right? Because, yes, I agree. John Oliver is a slightly different category as well because he is almost like investigative journalism, but it's
Yeah,
also on HBO, so it's protected in its own thing on Sunday nights, right? It's like primetime viewing rather than like, oh, this is on every night and it's the regular
totally.
press circuit. So, but yeah, again, I just, and I'm not trying to say this is not a big deal. This is a fucking big deal. Like to remove someone off the air for saying something that is not aligned and something that's not even that bad with your policies is like insane. But again, the other question is how important, in terms of like information being delivered from that medium, like is that medium actually truly a dying medium? And
Mm.
are there other ways to channel that information that can be more effective because maybe they are saying important things, right? Maybe there is important narratives in their monologues, in their comedic monologues, but who's to say that why not go on social media? And even though social media is also now being taken over by a lot of authoritarian powers that be, but I don't know, it just feels like there's an outlet for his voice to get centered in a different way that's a more effective way that is coming as a result of this authoritarian regime, yet
Mm.
will ultimately still be beneficial in the long run. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I can totally see that. I also do see like I think the value of late night shows, specifically because they're all hosted by comedians, is it does allow us to access the hard news and be able to swallow it. Like it
Mm-hmm.
gives us a sense of like when we're able to laugh about this, we can maybe
Mm-hmm.
face it or again like digest it a little bit more. But yeah, that doesn't have to be on like CBS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can definitely be the same kind of art and work and healing through a different medium that gives more freedom for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll probably be just Uranus and Gemini in general. We're going to have so many channels, so many platforms by the end of this transit, and everyone's just going to be talking, talking, talking.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of love it. As someone said,
Me
like
too.
you yap so much. I'm like, it's okay.
This is the season for yapping.
This next 7 years. So sorry. If you don't like yapping, listen more maybe.
There you go. How about that? Read a book.
Hey. Oh, well, Camille, this is always such a pleasure. I feel like what a week that was.
I don't, yeah. I don't really know what to say. We are here and we're standing and we're talking, I think, pretty coherently about it. And,
Oh
just
my
like for me
God.
as a sidebar and probably for you too, like astrologizing it is healing, right? It's
Mm,
not necessarily, as you said, bypassing like earlier on your stories, reels. It's a way to
yeah.
digest it through a language that makes sense to me. And so it's always
Yes.
like helpful to like level set. Okay, Mars, Chiron, Venus, got it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I usually do these videos or like these like again, 3 minute like real things to just like talk about random points about the week. And I
Yeah.
did one for the week ahead. And I went and I usually black out when I do them, like when you channel and you're done, you're like, hope to God I said something good here. But when I went back and listened, I'm like, not all the freedom of speech, not the how we restrict speech, how we I'm like, dear God,
Stunning.
The symbolism is alive, y'all, and it's showing up every way possible. I mean, even down to the summer I turned pretty getting a movie as the finale. Okay, that's Mars, Libra, Chiron, and Aries. Also, the fact
Mhm.
that we had Dancing with the Stars this week and it was an explosive season and people loved Steve Irwin's kid, right? Like
Yeah.
Robert Irwin. Like that's Mars, Libra, Chiron, and Aries. He's doing it and there's grief and there like
Yeah.
Real Housewives is back in Salt Lake City. That's chaotic. Like there was so much again
Yeah.
in the air that, it would be a disservice to only focus on one particular thing because there are really beautiful manifestations of what's happening in spite of so much shit, right? And I don't want people to think I can't make things happen for myself while also holding space for everything. We can hold space for everything. Okay. It's a lot of information, but you can take it at your digestible bite.
Yes,
So,
and that's what Jupiter in Cancer is helping us with, capacity. So if you don't feel like it's bringing you
mm,
something good, then it's just bringing you what I feel are just a cascade of horrors. Know that it's supposed to be probably hard, expansive. And so yeah,
mhm.
hold it. Hold it.
Any advice to navigate the rest of the next couple of weeks of Mars Scorpio, Camille? That's gonna be a rock and roll and good time.
Personally, channel it into something that you need to complete, right? Take those kind of intense energies and, yeah, use it in a way that can be productive. When it comes to dealing with what may or may not happen in the world and in society, when I think of Mars and Scorpio, I think about, well, think about the word I use, think about your battle plan. What's your strategy? Like, what will you do? It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't even have to be right now. But start thinking about that next move.
Hmm.
What the next offensive is going to be.
It might not be right now, but it will
Yeah.
most likely come at the full moon in Aries October 6th. I'm just saying
Yeah, it might not
because
be now, but it may be then. Okay. Yeah,
well, thank you so much, Camille, for another episode,
of
another
course.
transit convo. I'm sure we'll be back to talk about something else in the near future, but if you
Yeah.
like what you heard, like, subscribe, share, go check out Camille. Her website, her information is all down below, and we will be back very soon. So hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Bye.
Bye.